Hello, welcome everyone. I am Angela H. Brown. I am the Executive Director for Craft Lake City, and it is my pleasure to welcome you today to our Lunch and Learn about our newest exhibition, Celebration of the Hand, Save Our Great Salt Lake. Now, just a couple housekeeping items before we go ahead and start the discussion today. Please mute your microphone if you're not talking so that all attendees can hear the presentation. Closed captions can be turned on. Just look at kind of that toolbar section of your screen. You'll see a little CC and you can press that and using the live transcripts function. If you have any questions or comments, please put them in the chat. We have a Q&A reserved at the end of this discussion, and we would love to have you part of this discussion. So at any time, you're welcome to put those questions or comments in the chat. And survey, we've got a survey, we love to hear from you. We love your feedback, and it is your feedback that actually helps us improve our events, including this one today. So we'd love to have you fill out a quick survey at the end of this session. Speakers, so as I mentioned, I am the Executive Director for Craft Lake City, and I will be moderating today's discussion. It is my pleasure to welcome Denise Cartwright, founder of Save Our Great Salt Lake, and also the CEO of CRUDE. So we're going to be hearing from her in just a moment. We also have two local artisans part of the discussion today, Caro Nilsson and Camilla Stark. And both of them will be joining the discussion a little bit later on. So make sure that you stay till the end so you can hear some information about them and why they created their works. And now I'd like to thank our sponsors. Of course, we'd like to thank our collaborator, Save Our Great Salt Lake, as well as our title sponsor, CRUDE, and then, of course, the George S. Dolores Stories Eccles Foundation, the Center for the Living City, the National Endowment for the Arts, the NEA, the Utah Division of Arts and Museums, the Temporary Museum of Permanent Change, the Salt Lake City Arts Council, and of course, last but not least, ZAP, the Zoo Arts and Parks. Now, if you're not familiar with Craft Lake City, our mission is to educate, promote, and inspire local artisans while elevating the creative culture of the Utah arts community through science, technology, and art. And one of the ways that we do that is by hosting our largest event of the year, the 14th annual Craft Lake City D.I.Y Festival. Now, this is actually coming up very quickly on August 12th, 13th, and 14th. And many of the art that you see today in today's exhibition was actually done by Craft Lake City alums, so individuals that have actually been part of this D.I.Y festival, including Denise Cartwright, who we will hear from in just a moment. Craft Lake City also executes our mission at our holiday market up in Ogden, which is now a 2-day event. So mark your calendars to attend that as well in December 3rd and 4th up in Ogden, Utah. We also host year-round DIY workshops. We do most of them in person nowadays. However, we did launch a virtual series during COVID, and keep your eye out for some of those coming back again this winter. Now, with our curation projects, one of our most popular is, of course, today what we're talking about, which is our Celebration of the Hand and our Local Voices exhibition. So these are two different styles of exhibitions that we do in these metal frames in downtown Salt Lake City. So these metal frames were actually put up by the Temporary Museum of Permanent Change over a decade and a half ago. And we have had the pleasure of being able to curate these for the past 8 years. And we do two different types of works in these. We do a version, Celebration of the Hand, where we work with local artists, which is what we're talking about today with Save Our Great Salt Lake. And then we also do a version with local social justice organizations, for instance, Equality Utah, which was the exhibition that we just took down last month. And so now I want to introduce our latest exhibition that we just put up over the July 4th weekend, Save Our Great Salt Lake. And again, as I mentioned, it's in downtown Salt Lake City on Broadway. You can walk the city streets and see the exhibition 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It is a free exhibition for the public, and it features 14 local artisans. These giant posters that we call plakats, which is essentially the German word for billboard, these are hung in various parts along that Broadway corridor from 2nd West to 2nd East. And it is my pleasure now to introduce Denise Cartwright. Welcome, Denise. Tell us a little bit about yourself and the Save Our Great Salt Lake organization and why you started it.
Absolutely. Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for coming. Excited to introduce myself. I'm Denise Cartwright. I'm the founder and CEO of a microbiome-friendly skincare company called CRUDE, and I'm also the founder and executive director of Save Our Great Salt Lake. So about 8 years ago, I started this little skincare company. I grew up here in Utah and started experimenting with my own skincare products and was lucky to get accepted into a Craft Lake City just a few months in, and that Craft Lake City helped me buy more ingredients and gave me some returning customers, and it was really like the boost CRUDE needed to get going. So first of all, just thank you so much to Angela and Craft Lake City for continuing to support me over the years. Yeah, and so I didn't learn about the crisis that's happening at Great Salt Lake until last summer. I heard the Radio West episode on it, and it scared me. It really scared me. I spent a few days trying to learn everything I could about what we knew about the problem and what was being done to solve it. And it became clear to me that A, this is an extremely dire situation. B, not enough is being done to solve it. And C, not enough people know about the problem. Definitely more people know now about it almost a year later. We're seeing it on national news, definitely all over public news. It's clear that this is a big problem. The lake is drying up, and as it does, there's toxic dust that's being blown off of the lake into the valley. So seeing a need for more public awareness, I figured I could put my skills to use. I've spent the last 8 years doing marketing and PR and educating people about the complicated ecosystems on their skin. And so I thought I could maybe put those skills to use to help get the word out about Save Our Great Salt Lake. And so our real goal, I'm not an expert on water, I'm not an expert on the Great Salt Lake, but my goal is really to get the word out, to educate and create public awareness and grassroots energy and support for this issue. Because no matter how we go about solving this problem, we're gonna need a lot of people who are in support of taking dramatic action to make sure that we get this solved. So that's why I started Save Our Great Salt Lake. I'm super excited to collab with Craft Lake City on this exhibit. This exhibit actually started as one of the first things we did when we started Save Our Great Salt Lake is we started this artist campaign where we put out the call for artists to create any kind of graphic. The only rule was that it said Save Our Great Salt Lake. And so over the last year, we've been collecting these incredible posters from artists, from local artists, and you can actually find those all on our Instagram. We're just at Save Our Great Salt Lake. But I was so excited when Angela hit me up to do this exhibit, and now it's at Broadway, and we're taking it to a whole new level. So I'm super, super excited about it. And excited to have Caro here and Camilla. So just so grateful to these amazing artists. I guess I just want to emphasize again that this is a serious eco-crisis, and this is one of many eco-crises happening around the world right now. It's definitely exacerbated by climate change. And this is something that we need to take seriously, and we need our officials to take seriously. So please, follow us and support our work, share our posts. It's important that we get the word out. So yeah, thank you all again so much for being here.
Thank you, Denise. Well, and you mentioned your involvement with CRUDE and how you kind of started at the D.I.Y festival. And this is a picture actually of you, I think at last year's D.I.Y Fest, is that correct?
Yeah.
And it's been really awesome that we were able to partner for this particular show, because it's kind of like full circle for us in a lot of ways, because this is your new nonprofit, Save Our Great Salt Lake, but also you were able to come in and help partner with Craft Lake City for the funding as a title sponsor for CRUDE with your very successful, nationally acclaimed, soap-free skincare line, CRUDE. And so it's so cool that the three of us can kind of connect in this way with Craft Lake, CRUDE, and Save Our Great Salt Lake. So I love this picture here that kind of solidifies that triad there.
Yeah, full circle moment.
But getting back into Save Our Great Salt Lake, and we're going to be showing some of the works from the exhibition that, again, you can see on Broadway right now while we're having this discussion. But I want to get into a little bit about Save Our Great Salt Lake, because this organization is really different. There are a lot of organizations out there, doing the work about how to save the Great Salt Lake. With that in mind, the type of work that you're doing is very, very different. And could you please kind of talk a little bit about that and what sets you apart from other organizations?
Yeah, so I see our role largely as like amplifying the work of the other organizations that are working on this issue. Like I said, I'm not an expert in water or Great Salt Lake, but like Friends of Great Salt Lake, they are, Utah Rivers Council, Heal Utah. There's all these incredible orgs that are doing this incredible work. And so I see our job as amplifying their work and then also taking more of this like messaging, grassroots energy, sort of PR approach and getting the word out. We're also like not afraid to sort of poke the bear a little bit. This is an urgent issue that needs to be treated urgently. And if we're not seeing our leaders treating it urgently, we're not afraid to let them know that we're not okay with that. So
what are some of the ways that you're letting them know?
Yeah, so just this last year, we did a virtual, so we were going to do an in-person rally, but with COVID, we decided it was safer to take it virtual. So we got 600 attendees to a virtual rally. We had Terry Tempest Williams speak. We had so many incredible speakers, and we sent that with sort of like a declaration to every single legislator in Utah. And then we did an in-person, or like a socially distanced, they called it a ghost rally, the first day of the legislative session, where we went up super early in the morning and we put all these posters in the ground and all these little brine shrimp and birds, and it was actually really cute. So we staged that in-person event. We did a postcard campaign through the legislative session where we had people submit their copy for a postcard, and then we printed it all out and sent them to all of our legislators. And then, yeah, anytime there's, we like bombarded a city council meeting. I think we got like 100 people to a city council meeting. Basically, anytime we're seeing there's an opportunity for action or pressure to be applied, we're calling our people to help us make a difference. And so definitely follow us on Instagram and follow our stories, because we're posting all the times about different opportunities that you can show up and make it clear to our leaders that this is an important issue.
Well, and that's something where you've really been able to use your unique skills, Denise, as someone who's very good at marketing and branding to kind of increase the awareness. And you saw a need where, you yourself, this is kind of an issue that was kind of new to you. And it took like the Radio West episode for it to really kind of like hit home, like, wow, this is a dire, we're in dire straits here with what's happening with the lake. And so that's really cool that you're able to kind of like see, hey, this is how I can help. And it's in a very unique way.
Yeah, they say like your eco calling is like something you're good at, something you love doing, and something that's needed. And I kind of felt like this was the way I could contribute. It also just like came from a sense of urgency. Like I want to have a future here in the Wasatch Front. I want to have a family here. And I'm afraid that we're not going to have breathable air, And so this is something that affects all of us. And I think it's important that we all, however we can contribute to making sure that we make a change, I think it's on all of us to do that.
I agree. And again, I think the thing that's so unique about Save Our Great Salt Lake as an organization is that you can kind of provide this marketing and activism and let some of the other organizations that are doing like the hard-nosed scientific research do what they're best at, which is so nice to have some complementary organizations out there in that aspect. Sometimes an individual see an issue and they'll kind of actually create an organization where there's already one out there doing that same function or fight. And so it's so nice to see that what you've done is almost created something that's complementary to fill a void that was kind of really needed for this issue.
Yeah, we're trying to support everyone who's working on this issue. We were actually on a call yesterday. There were probably 10 different orgs, Friends of Great Salt Lake, Utah Rivers. All of us got on a call yesterday to talk about what are we focusing on with this issue? How can we support each other? So it's been great that we've all been able to, work together. And I think we can all see that we all have the same goal in mind. And so with our powers combined, how can we get this done?
Well, and you've really been able to align some heavy hitters. I mean, Terry Tempest Williams, having her in your camp. Tell us a little bit about how did Terry Tempest Williams get involved? And then for those that maybe don't know who she is, can you just like talk briefly about who she is?
Yeah, so Terry Tempest Williams is this incredible activist, writer. She spends I think she's part-time down in Southern Utah. Incredible writer, definitely look into her books. But I think we contacted her through Instagram. We had been liking her things. I think she maybe saw one of our posts and We were kind of just consistently hitting her up to see if she was interested. And then she was interested in speaking at the virtual rally, which we just recently posted a clip from her speech on our Instagram, so you can find it there. But yeah, it's been fun to collaborate with not only water experts, but artists and poets and writers. And really, I think it's important that all of these different perspectives come to the table if we really want to make a dramatic change.
I agree. Well, and tell me a little bit about the event that you did actually out at the Great Salt Lake.
So which one?
I guess I'm thinking there was a number of people, maybe even a couple hundred people that came out. Was that correct?
Oh, there was. Okay, so there was a reading of a poem. Nan Seymour, she runs River Writing Collective here in Salt Lake City. She did a collective poem for Great Salt Lake. So hundreds of people contributed like one line to this poem over the course of many months. I think people are still actually contributing to the poem, but we had a beautiful reading down at the lake at Antelope Island a few months ago. And there's actually footage of that event on Nan's Instagram, I think, and on her website. But I thought that was such a beautiful idea and such a great way to get hundreds of people involved in this issue in a way that is, you know, really beautiful and heart-centered.
Well, and then the poem was read in front of the lake, is that right?
Yeah, we read it facing the lake. It was really beautiful.
How long did it take to read the poem?
So we didn't read the whole thing. I think we were reading for maybe an hour. Yeah. It was really cool.
It might be the world's longest poem by the time everyone's finished with it.
Yeah.
And I love that anyone can contribute a line. I contributed a line.
Oh, you did? Oh, good.
Well, and so Denise, you know, one other thing too, like when your organization was kind of first like coming up, you know, like about a year ago, I started seeing these posters in the stores of, you know, all these local businesses, a lot of my favorite shops, and you know, with similar to our Plakat campaign, right? Where essentially it was kind of the same assignment, where interpret this Save Our Great Salt Lake message. And I was so taken back by it and was like, wow, this is so wonderful. Like, who's behind this? And it was so cool that, I mean, honestly, Denise, you were kind of like the secret person behind this campaign. Like, nobody really knew for quite a while that it was actually you.
Yeah, at first we did kind of keep it on the DL. I think a lot of that was that we didn't know who we are or what we were doing. We just knew that something needed to happen. And so we just started putting posters everywhere. A lot of what we've done over the last 3 months is start to determine, like, what is our mission statement? Who are we as an org? How do we function? But yeah, at first it was kind of fun to just be this sort of like stealth operation that was just doing crazy stuff.
Well, and obviously, you know, no great organization is just one person. You know, Craft Lake City, we have a myriad of individuals and volunteers and paid Teamsters that help us out, 2 of which are on the call today. Shout out to Morgana Faye and Liz Valls. Thanks for your help today. Is there anyone that you want to give like a shout out to that has really helped you with Save Our Great Salt Lake?
Oh man, there's so many people. We've got hundreds of volunteers that have participated to this campaign. It's been so incredible to see the public just step up and get activated. So to all of our volunteers, everyone in our Slack channel, all of our followers, everyone who's sharing our posters, the CRUDE team has really worked hard on this. We have some volunteers in our governing committee that have been working every day on this. Yeah, it's definitely a labor of love.
Well, and what is next for Save Our Great Salt Lake? I know you said that you had that call yesterday, kind of like working with other organizations, talking about how you can align together. Is there anything that you can kind of share, any plans that you have in the works?
Yeah, so we have an event coming up in October called Balancing the Biome. The focus of this event is going to be rights of nature and the rights of nature movement, and exploring this idea of, you know, why is nature considered property, and should Great Salt Lake have a right to exist as a living ecosystem? There's really interesting cases happening all around the world with rights of nature right now, and so that's something we want to explore. So we'll be having an event in October, which we'll be posting more about in the near future. We'll likely be doing an in-person rally in probably toward the middle of the legislative session. We don't have any bills that we're like getting behind yet, or we're still kind of in the exploratory phase as far as like pushing a bill. But yeah, we do have this conversation now happening with these other organizations. And so if there's something that comes up that we're excited about, we'll definitely be letting people know through our social media.
And are you still looking to work with artisans? If there's any artists or artisans that are part of this conversation today that are thinking, hey, I would love to get involved and create some artwork with this message, is there an opportunity for them to get involved?
Yeah, this poster campaign is ongoing. And so anyone is still welcome to submit a poster. We're planning a couple like gallery strolls for early next year. So we'll actually get some of these framed and in a gallery. So definitely submit your poster. Everyone who submits gets posted. So yeah, the more the merrier.
Fantastic. Well, and it has been so fun seeing, this new work come up with these 14 artisans, just in their interpretation of, the message, and, seeing them kind of do their own research and share their own different point of view. One thing that we did for this show was we gave them a color palette to work with. That way, all of the work can kind of be united. So as people are walking down Broadway and seeing these plakats, they can kind of see for themselves that it's like connected, that it's part of something. And it's, our goal that individuals will actually, take some time and learn about what's happening with the lake, and that they can then from there, kind of get involved, hopefully, or at least have discussions about it. And, that getting involved can be so many different ways. And Denise, I think you're such a great example of just how you decided to get involved. And so thank you so much for sharing your journey today.
Thank you so much for having me.
So we're going to go ahead and chat with a couple of the artisans part of the exhibit. The first one, we're going to talk to Caro Nilsson. So, or Caro, pardon me. So Caro, I know you're here. Do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. Can everybody hear me? Can you hear me? Yeah. Okay, great. I'm Caro. I am an artist working full-time on my art in Salt Lake City. I've lived in Salt Lake since probably like 2019, so 3 or 4 years now. And I work on a whole bunch of different media, mostly painting, but I've been recently getting into murals, and I also do digital work like what you're seeing right here. And I guess I can talk a little bit about what inspired this piece, if that's something that, yeah, okay, great. And you had just mentioned like how different everybody's interpretation was, and they're all united with color. And I went and saw the exhibition downtown last week, and it was so nuts to me how people approached this issue so differently. There are a lot of people who I think were looking towards the future as like, this is what could happen, and it's like very scary and bleak. But I think the thing that I was focusing on in terms of the Save Our Great Salt Lake campaign is what we stand to lose. I've been thinking a lot, especially since living here. I came here by way of the East Coast, and out there, the climate change issue is not really super noticed. Like sometimes it's very hot and hazy, but it's never as in your face as it is out here. And I've been thinking a lot about climate change and grief, and like how do we continue to have hope for a thing while simultaneously feeling grief as it's happening. So that's kind of what this piece is. It's a celebration of like everything that's beautiful that's happening right now, that's actively changing in front of us, and everything that we stand to lose, all of the ecosystems that are involved in the Great Salt Lake, and how we can perhaps have hope and also hold our grief at the same time. There's some little details in this piece at the very bottom. Among those rabbit brush, there's some hands that are like kind of reaching up. So that's sort of like, yeah, how do we hold hands with both at the same time when we're looking at the future? I think somebody told me last year that having hope, like actually feeling the emotion of hope, is a really scary thing because it involves a lot of like abandon and trust. Like when you're actually allowing yourself to hope for something, it means that you're emotionally invested. And perhaps it won't turn out the way that you want. And then that, I don't know, leads more to grief and heartbreak, but perhaps it does go the way that you want. Kind of feels like walking towards a mirage in a lot of ways. Scary. So yeah.
What a beautiful interpretation of this work, Caro. Thank you so much for sharing that. And those dualities, I think, between like hope, like you were saying, and the grief and the celebration. I think a lot of times we feel a number of emotions at the same time, and it can be hard to reconcile them, especially when they're opposing emotions like that. And you've captured that so well, the beauty in the darkness in this piece. And thank you so much for sharing about that. I love that you pointed out the hands at the bottom, because it's so subtle. Even the colors and how they kind of are camouflaged, with the shrubbery, so to speak, down there. So that's so neat. Tell us about why you've got the birds in kind of a circle there.
So yeah, that's sort of highlighting. I'm glad that you pointed out the hands again. It's sort of like these things that are growing and dependent on the Great Salt Lake. Like we as humans are dependent in the same way that these rabbit brush shrubs are dependent on the Great Salt Lake. And these birds that are in this circle, I guess they're like separated from the composition, because to me, the birds that come and go from the Great Salt Lake, the fact that they have this memory of where to come to, they travel so far. I forget, I apologize, the name of these specific birds, but there's so many different species of birds that travel hundreds and hundreds of miles and somehow know the way to go. And in that movement and in that remembering, they're also part of that ecosystem. So highlighting that movement and highlighting like, this is not an isolated issue. Like the Great Salt Lake is a beautiful thing and a thing to go and like, I don't know, feel awe about when you're standing in front of it, but it's also this insanely interconnected place that not only is it pretty dire for the Wasatch Front if we don't take care of it, but it has implications throughout the entire Mountain West with all of these different ecosystems that these birds in particular are part of and traveling from all over the place. And if this ecosystem collapses, who knows like what will happen for the entire like other things that they're going out and being part of.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing about that. Again, beautiful, beautiful work. One last question. What research did you do before creating this piece? I mean, it seems like you're pretty knowledgeable about a few different elements here in this piece.
I think the research that I've done has mostly just been following along with the Save Our Great Salt Lake campaign. And in the grief that I feel and in the fear that I feel, like knowing as much as I can about these ecosystems while we have them makes me feel a little bit better and a little bit safer. I don't know, the ability to appreciate something while we have it, I think is important. But this piece, a lot of my work comes from direct experiences that I have in places. So the bulk of the research, I think, just came from being by the Great Salt Lake, witnessing it. There was something recently that was published, Lake Words, I think, and Nan Seymour, who had a lot to do with that Save Our Great Salt Lake poem, was involved in some ways. I don't remember the name of the people who authored it, but part of that book was saying like, in witnessing somebody that we love in their suffering, like we stand and sit vigil and we witness. Like if somebody that we love is dying, we go and sit with them. So like, yeah, just being with the Great Salt Lake, feeling what it's like there, seeing all the life swirling around. That was the bulk of my research, I think.
Thanks again for sharing.
Of course.
And we've got another slide here kind of just talking a little bit about you and who you are for individuals that want to find out more about you and your work. Do you want to kind of point them in the right direction?
Yeah, I think the place that I'm most active as far as my work goes is on Instagram. So this tag is a good way to find me. But along with the grief and hope at the same time in regard to climate, this picture that you have on the far left is part of an ongoing project that I've been working on called the Smoke Portal Project, and sort of in tandem with the air quality thing. Last summer it was super smoky here, and it takes landscapes away from us, and it takes the ability to exist in those landscapes away from us. And these paintings are all like big desaturated landscapes with a small little portal to like what it could look like if it was like back to normal. It's like, how do we see through all of this like blinding stuff, and hold on to that hope for a way that it could be in the future if we pay attention and if we are good stewards of the land that we live in. So that's a project that I'm most passionate about. But yeah, Instagram is a great place to find me.
Well, thank you so much for sharing. We look forward to following more of your work and seeing new pieces that you create. And thanks for sharing today. And of course, being part of our exhibition. It's been lovely working with you. And we hope you might even consider applying to be part of the D.I.Y festival in the future. A little shameless plug there.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I think I'll be there this August. So see you there.
Awesome. Thank you. Great. Well, we'd like to now move on to our next artist that's part of today's discussion, Camilla Stark. Welcome, Camilla. Will you please introduce yourself?
Absolutely. My name is Camilla. I live in Provo currently, and I've been here for about 10 years. Came from Colorado, but it really feels like I'm barely even dipping my toes into the landscape here. It's so complex and so vast, and always, happy to learn more about it, and really resonate with what Caro said about that sense of grief and hope, and how hope can be dangerous because what if it doesn't work out, so yeah, I'm an artist. I don't get to do it full time, unfortunately, but I do as much as I can when I can. This piece is actually really different from most of the stuff I do. So if you go to the next slide, I'm going to kind of tell you the story of how this came about. So a lot of what I do is very handmade, and I do a lot of ink drawings, block printing, printmaking, embroidery, that sort of thing. And I really work a lot with the sense of duality and opposites, the coexistence of light and dark, love and fear, and how they kind of need each other, balance each other. And also I do a lot of kind of my own spiritual exploration through art, and also environmental activism, and kind of diving into this concept called psychogeography, which is how does the physical environment inform our mental environment and change who we are as people and how we interact. And I'm really grateful for Save Our Great Salt Lake for having the Save Our Great Salt Lake campaign, because then, able to do something with my artwork to get it in front of more people to hopefully, be a climate activist as well. But as I said, my piece that I made for Save Our Great Salt Lake was quite different from most of the stuff I do. And that's really because when I, read the prompt and heard about the campaign, it really took me back to a few years ago, around between 2015 through 2018. If you go to the next slide, I think that has pictures. Yeah, so I was really going through kind of a sort of transformative time in my life, around that time a few years ago, where I was going through some major shifts in my career and who I was and what I wanted to spend my time on. And I really found visiting the lake to be a very sacred and transformative place. And it really instilled in me this deep love for this area. And that's a big part of the reason why I'm still here creating art about the natural environment here. And I created a lot of kind of self-portraits in that time at the lake that was really just kind of working through my own changes and my own kind of death and rebirth. And the lake was a huge part of that. And so yeah, photography was really kind of a sense of self-portraiture during that time to process what I was going through. If you go to the next slide. So I really kind of brought that back when I was thinking about the Save Our Great Salt Lake campaign. I took these pictures of some birds that had died in the lake and had gotten encrusted in the salt. And that, I've always found dead birds to be a very compelling imagery because they look so dynamic when they're dead. Their wings often spread out, their necks are pulled back because of the way that, certain tendons pull their head when they're decomposing, and it really makes them look like they're eternally in flight, even though they're still, even though they're dead. And I've always found that to be just a very compelling image, and so I wanted to create that, bring those images back for Save Our Great Salt Lake campaign. And so that's kind of, this was my first pass. The posters that Denise and Save Our Great Salt Lake called for. And then when I was asked to kind of expand upon that imagery with the Craft Lake City Celebration of the Hand campaign, if you go to the next one, let's see, yeah, so it's this piece again. So what I did was I layered some images here. And the background image is actually one of my self-portraits. I'm like kind of covered up by the birds, so you can't like see me, which I kind of prefer, but it shows kind of the landscape of the lake. And then on top of it, I have these two bird images layered that they're very striking, they're very arresting images. And even though like it was fine for these birds to die, like it wasn't showing that there was some kind of horrible crisis going on, birds just die and get preserved in the lake. But it really kind of shows, what could happen if this ecosystem collapses, if the lake is not able to support these birds anymore, much more widespread death and, inappropriate death in that case. And knowing that this would be public art, I wanted to create that arresting imagery to get people to stop and look and think about, oh, we've got to do something. And then I think I'm the only one who included the Save Our Great Salt Lake tagline on their final, which I don't know, I'm glad I did, because I think the typography also is like kind of for me a big part of the piece. I'm just going to share with you a little Easter egg, I think on the next slide. Yeah, so I chose this font because this little swirl on the L looks like the spiral jetty, which again has been a very transformative piece of art for me, located in the Great Salt Lake on the north side. If you haven't visited, I really recommend it. And yeah, I think that's everything for me. The final thing about this piece is for me, it was really about looking back to what the lake has meant to me and also looking forward to what could happen if we don't do something, but what I hope will happen, which is restoration and getting more water to the lake and doing what we can to preserve it. So thank you guys for, the work that you're doing. I really appreciate it. Really glad to be a part of it. So that's it for me. And I think I do have some social medias on the next slide. No, I don't. Okay, well, you can look me up on Instagram or my website, which is just CamillaStark.com. And then on Instagram, I'm Camilla Gluh, CAMILLAGLUH, or just search my name, you'll find me. So that's it. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Camilla. And I love that little Easter egg that you shared about the font and the Great Salt Lake. And that was, the spiral jetty. That, of course, is a earthwork sculpture at the Great Salt Lake. I was actually surprised that we didn't see more spiral jetty references in some of the pieces that came out of this campaign, just as it is kind of an iconic, piece associated with the Great Salt Lake. But that's so fun to see that you kind of did want to have that homage there and do that in the font. Was that something that kind of you thought about all along, or did that just kind of organically come up like last minute?
No, I was just looking at fonts and I saw that font and I was like, oh, that looks like the spiral jetty. I'm going to try this font out. And it ended up being one of my favorites. And so I ended up going with it, for the final.
That's really neat. That's awesome. Well, thank you so much for sharing so much about your piece and for kind of providing that context with some of your other work and how, what nice kismet it was that you've already been creating work out at the Great Salt Lake and to kind of then be chosen to be part of Denise's campaign and then ours as well. So it seems like there's like a common thread here now with the lake and your work.
Absolutely.
I'll be excited to see what you do next. And remind us all again one more time where we can follow you on Instagram.
It's like, I'm just gonna put it in the chat because
it's
like
put it in the chat.
It's Camilla Gluh, which is just like a silly little name I came up with when I was like 12 and just have like held on to, even though I know it's not the most professional. I think it's fun. So that's me.
There's nothing wrong with a little whimsy. And I think
Yeah.
a lot of us, it's kind of fun to have that email account, from when we were 12, that kind of
Yeah.
outs us a little bit. It was fun. So fun. Cool. Well, great. Well, thank you so much, Camilla. It was fantastic speaking with you today. And we're going to go ahead and kind of wrap up and give our attendees a chance to ask some questions to everyone that is here today. But before we get to that Q&A, I just want to visually remind everybody where they can actually go and see the exhibition themselves. Of course, they can go to our website, craftlikecity.com, and see the work, but it's much more impactful to see it in person as it is large format. These are 4 feet by 8 feet large sized posters. And you can see they run here kind of on Broadway along Squatters, which is like the Second West, all the way up here past State Street and up to about Second East here, right by the Broadway cinemas. So do grab some friends and take a little free walking tour and see that work. You won't regret it. And Denise, just real quick, what can people do if they want to help out with Save Our Great Salt Lake?
So definitely follow us on social media, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, we're on all of them. Share our posts with your followers. If you want to get more involved and volunteer, we have a Slack channel. If you just DM us your email, we'll get you on the Slack channel. We're going to be activating that more and more over the coming months. So if you want to hang up posters or if you want to help with rallies or anything like that, definitely get on the Slack. And always bug your legislators just for the next few months, for the next few years, just have it as part of your regular routine to be contacting your legislators and reminding them that this is an important issue. And we'll definitely have opportunities around that in the coming months as well. So yeah, just mostly follow us and we'll tell you where to go from there.
Thanks, Denise. All right, it's time for our Q&A. So I know that there has been a couple of questions maybe in the chat. And then also I know that our Artisan and Programs Manager, Liz Bowles, has a question to start us off as well. So let's go ahead, Liz, and hear your question first. And then I think we can volley over to Morgana with a question in the chat.
Absolutely. I have 2 questions actually. Oh, and I put them in the chat and it looks like it got minimized there. So my first question was to the artists. If you have any other environmental themed pieces or series in the works right now, or if there are other causes that you've become interested in recently that you see some sort of opportunity to make artwork about.
Should we go first with Caro and then Camilla?
Go first. I guess I briefly talked about the smoke series. So I think that's for me the most all-consuming environmental project at the moment. But I do see there are so many organizations like you all mentioned and Denise mentioned that are doing work around the Great Salt Lake and also the air quality in the valley. It seems like it used to just be the winter time when we would have inversions, but now in the summertime, especially last summer with all the smoke, it's like, when do we ever get to breathe clean air? So continuing to make more work about clean air is really, it feels important. And coming up, I'm helping out with Utah Sierra Club they're doing an art build sometime in August, I believe, about atmospheric pollution in the park. So that's they're in some sort of EPA legislative something or other where they're trying to address the fact that within EPA regulations, the national parks they're protected. They should be protected from atmospheric pollution, and they are not. There's plenty of atmospheric pollution coming from a lot of manufacturing stuff that's nearby. So they're in a long battle to try and get these things to be addressed. This is whatever is currently happening is against EPA regulations. So I'll be making art involved more with atmospheric pollution within very recognizable landscapes. So Zion, Bryce, Arches, all of the big 5, and the way that atmospheric pollution takes away from those landscapes. So that's exciting and important as well. That's all for me, I think.
As for me, I am currently working on actually a very big environmental project, which is I'm working on a 120-page graphic novel, really about the end of the world from a climate point of view, and how do we live with that? How do we cope with that? How do we keep having hope and moving on and continuing, you know, when the world seems to be crumbling around us? And for me, it's been a very kind of revelatory process for like bringing me hope with how to keep moving forward, keep fighting, instead of just being like, it's too big, we can't do anything, I give up. So if anyone has any connections in the publishing industry or knows anything about publishing a comic, I'm currently evaluating my publishing options because I really do want to try to get it out there. Not just like a small self-published thing, but you know, really want to get it out there if I can. So if anyone has any thoughts or connections, please let me know.
Awesome. Thanks for putting that out, Camilla. Morgana, what question do we have from the attendees?
Yeah, totally. There are a few in the chat here. So Michael has pointed out that the Utah Division of Forestry, Fire, and State Lands recently announced that the National Audubon Society and the Nature Conservancy received a grant for the Great Salt Lake Watershed Enhancement Program. And Michael's curious what Save Our Great Salt Lake's outreach efforts are like with these organizations in particular.
Yeah, we've been in touch with both of those orgs. We had a long, in-depth conversation with the Water Conservancy's Water Policy Director in December, and kind of ongoing contact with Audubon. So definitely their insights are informing our strategy. And yeah, we're definitely trying to build connections with all of these different orgs and definitely help each other out.
Awesome, thank you. This is another question for you, Denise. What has been the most challenging part for you in getting Save Our Great Salt Lake off the ground? And has there been any part of this project or process that's really surprised you in particular?
I actually think what has surprised me is how easy it was to get it off the ground. And it surprises me, but it doesn't. I think we're in a unique situation here with our particular eco crisis where it's affecting our day-to-day life. We can already feel it and experience it. When we have a super windy day, we're already experiencing the toxic dust from the lake, which is a bummer, but it also makes it easier to get people activated. It's not like, you know, some rare species in the lake is dying and we're trying to get people activated around it. You know, people are actually experiencing the effects of this problem. And so I've been shocked by how many people have wanted to get involved and help and volunteer. And yeah, it's been incredible to see the public support for this issue. As far as like challenges, yeah, I think like I'm learning how to be an organizer. I have some, you know, organizing experience, but taking on this project and organizing as many people as we're organizing, that's been new for me. And so I'm just kind of trying to like fine tune my skills. I'm learning about what works and what doesn't work. And yeah, it's been fun and crazy and really inspiring.
Awesome, thank you. This is a question from Sierra. Did I hear that there was a way to become involved through submitting a poster design?
Yes, so the artist poster campaign is ongoing. The only rule is that your poster says Save Our Great Salt Lake, and you know, you can interpret that however you will. We post the artist posters every few days on our Instagram, and below them there's like some details about what the campaign is and how to submit. So go to our Instagram, find the last one we posted, and all the details will be there.
Awesome. This is another one from Michael, who asks, are guided tours part of the conversation about public outreach?
Yeah, we've had some conversations about like field trips. One org that's doing this consistently is the Great Salt Lake Institute at Westminster. We went and did a little field trip with them and learned about the microbialites and you know, what's happening with the ecosystem there. So I would definitely look them up. I think they do, like if you had a group or like a class that wanted to go do a field trip there, I'm fairly certain they host that. But we will also likely be doing in-person events like that.
Awesome. Well, that is it for the questions that we've got in the chat, unless anyone has any last minute questions for Denise or the artist.
Fantastic. Well, it looks like we're at time, so let's go ahead and wrap up. Thank you everyone for your wonderful questions. Of course, we also want to thank all of our supporters. Craft Lake City's year-round programming is supported in part by the residents of the Salt Lake City County through the Zoo Arts and Parks ZAP program, the Salt Lake City Arts Council, the George S. and Dolores Story Eccles Foundation, the Utah Arts and Museums with funding from the state of Utah and the National Endowment of the Arts. The Celebration of the Hand program is supported in part by the National Endowment for the Arts, the Arts and Parts program, the Utah Division of Arts and Museums, the Temporary Museum of Permanent Change, the Salt Lake City Arts Council, the Center for the Living City, and the George S. and Dolores Story Eccles Foundation. We can never thank these partners enough as they help Craft Lake City produce this programming as well as our year-round programming. And then, of course, thank you so much, Denise, with CRUDE and Save Our Great Salt Lake for being part of today's discussion, but also for your financial support in making this exhibition available to the public for free 24 hours a day and 7 days a week in downtown Salt Lake City. So thanks again, everyone, and thank you again to our artisans, Camilla, Stark, and Caro for being here as well. And we look forward to seeing you all at the D.I.Y Festival coming up August 12th, 13th, and 14th at the Utah State Fair Park. So put it in your calendars. And thanks again for being here today. Look out for a survey coming to your inboxes, and we hope you'll make some time to go see the artwork downtown in person. Thanks again.
Thanks, everyone.